last line of defense in order to protect the country and ensure national security in the worst case scenario. Now, if there is no retaliation in the world that we have mentioned, the country is at the risk of losing its independence altogether, being claimed by another state without a letter of last resort as the final line of defense. And without this final line of defense, there isn't even a chance of survival for the country in question. Now, moving on to our rebuttals and weighing against the opening opposition. A big point made by opening opposition is that essentially human life is extremely valuable and death should be avoided at all costs. Death is bad. Now, this is true. We cannot argue with this. However, in the case of an imminent threat of nuclear war, death is unavoidable and occurs in either world. However, in our world, the security of and the livelihood of the civilians within the country being attacked is attempted at being maintained. Without retaliation, the protection of the country in need of protection is not even attempted at. Now, the other point made by opening opposition is that self-defense is only justified when the enemy attacks first. This is entirely true. However, on the case of an imminent threat of a nuclear war, this value has already been treaded on upon this threat of nuclear war. So this whole idea of only fight back when you are attacked first, it's already happening. Now, no, thank you. The next point that I would like to mention is the idea that opening opposition states that this ruins the image of the country defending itself if it chooses to retaliate. This is entirely insignificant when the country is on the threat of complete destruction, which throws this entire argument out of the window. This is less important, no thank you, than fighting for the survival of the country on the verge of a nuclear war. And this sense of a moral high ground is absolutely unaffordable to the country at risk. Furthermore, they have stated, and I quote, countries who are on the defense have historically been victims of history. This idea essentially states that we are surrendering, we are admitting defeat and the forfeit of a fighting chance for the country in question. Now, moving on to the closing opposition. The closing opposition stated that we must take actions of revenge without using nuclear weapons. However, we have already proven why the dire state of these countries that are on the threat of a nuclear war require this defense to fight back. These other methods of defense without nuclear weapons is only an option before the letters of last resort has to be utilized when there is no other better option. It is a last line of defense. Now, they also stated, closing opposition, that we are harming innocent civilians of another country by retaliating. Isn't this not less significant for the leaders of that country to put their own civilians above the lives of those in other countries? As the leaders who have been elected by their people, they hold the biggest responsibility to take care of their people above all else, especially in the chance that they are out of the picture, dead or incapacitated. Now, by putting these final lines of defense in place, we are ensuring the last effort towards ensuring security and protection of the country. Now, finally, I would like to weigh up against the opening government. The opening government stated that the damage and the drastic consequences of nuclear war are unavoidable. However, I believe that we have better extended on how this is exacerbated without retaliation and the long-term effects and consequences on the citizens of the country without retaliation. Yes.
We told you that in the moment in which you are nuked, the citizen's first thought is not to get revenge, it is life. Why then is retaliation something that is justified insofar as it's not what the people want in making that decision on behalf?
Like I've already stated, the letters of last resort is essentially when moral high ground above the country attacking you is no longer relevant. It is no longer justifiable to have this moral high ground of not defending yourself, not fighting back, because it is irrelevant in the face of preventing mass destruction and upholding human life. Now, the other idea made by the opening governments is that the government has an obligation to uphold protection and justice. And this is something we completely agree with, and we have further elaborated on why these responsibilities of these leaders must be upheld and their citizens must be prioritized above all else, and the well-being of their country should be prioritized above all else. Now, the opening government has also stated that the government must protect its people, and I believe that we have better explained how this is achieved through a letters of last resort as a final defense mechanism for its country against exterior forces. Now, the next idea is that the threshold of humanity and morality have already been crossed, and the idea of retaliating is also a sense of delivering justice to the initial perpetrator. We have further extended on this point and why this justice is so important, why the sense of morality and moral high ground is no longer significant in the face of complete destruction, which is why we strongly believe that the letters of last resort are absolutely crucial when it comes to a final line of defense to maintain the security and safety of these countries in the worst case scenario. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
Right, I thank the government whip for their fine remarks and would like to invite the opposition whip to close the case for side opposition and the debate as a whole. Hear, hear.
Okay, am I audible enough?
No.
I'll just say yes. As I've just followed through the trend, basically, me and my teammate would have never thought that we just go up here because we thought we've lost since the quarter. But it's a very great gratitude to be up here, thanks to the motivation of Andy right there, my teachers, my teammates, and some opponents motivating us to actually debate this final, right? So also thanks to especially my teammate and the opponents who have actually helped me through this journey. And yeah, this is like probably my first time being in this stage, right? So I'll just start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, the moment government joins this debate and starts talking about how these are so justifiable, but the moment they actually come inside this debate, they talk about the harms of how these would just make it so that these people are invaded, they're oppressed, and that these people's lives are way worse. And realizing that the fact that now they literally do the same, they literally imply and replicate these damages to these other countries and do the same thing that makes it so this is so quote-unquote so dehumanizing and so quote-unquote immorally bad, right? So I'll split my speech into 3 parts. I'll respond to some of CO's case, then I'll see CG's case, prove why OG is out of this debate and why we actually way over OO, right? First of all, what did they tell us in this debate? They say that they talk a lot about these harms. They talk a lot how these students are going to be oppressed. Their lives are going to be way much worse. These next generations are all harmed, right? And that these, of course, these metrics should be about how these government and these people are trying to benefit their people the most, right? But response, it's 1 minute. You gotta understand this pattern. They assume that the moment we get bombed and we bomb them back, right? The issues of losing, right? Because we want to compare this whole case where they say that they replicate these harms and they make it so these harms are back, right? But it's so dehumanizing to the principle where, of course, no human person would think to the fact that it's literally right for you to kill, for example, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but by killing 100 millions of people for the sake of just defending your own, quote-unquote, defend your own country, right? They keep talking about these defensive measures and all these defensive lines, right? We say that these defensive, right, first of all, is not exclusive in our side, because these offensive already exist to protect their country, because we've already come to an agreement that no leader would, of course, just let their people die, right? Second of all, we say that it's 100% sure that the only thing, quote-unquote, self-defense is just going to be them bombing them back and replicating this damage, right? There's, quote-unquote, no self-defense. These people are still going to be left vulnerable and still going to be left trying to suffer and do whatever and right. This means that now they make it so these damages are more severe for both of the nations. But even in our worst case, where these people are actually left vulnerable, but in their side they replicate these damage and make it so now these other nations, more and more casualty exists, and now these people are actually now more left vulnerable and severe, right? It's completely not right for them to think that they actually do more better, even though they replicate these harms, and these harms are not related to them at all, right? Okay, let's move into why we went over OG, right? Because we believe that, okay, they talk about this incentive and objective of these leaders is to protect these people, and for example, like that, right? We say that, okay, even you gotta understand that being on the edge of these nuclear bombs literally does not actually mean that there's already these nuclear bomb and war going on, right? This means that there's this huge tensions that's about to go on. So the moment you make these plans, the moment you make these things, right, you start to make more, there's this tension where you provoke them, you give them more incentive to actually start attacking you. You make it so that there's more reasons for these people to attack, because in case of something, for example, these last resort message where you say that, okay, we want to bomb them back, now they are in fear, right? Because of course these harms are also very severe to these nations that are actually bombing them, right? So of course these things will just irritate them to actually make it so now they bomb these countries back more, right? They say there's no protocol plan to help them, right? I'll just take one POIs quick.
Thank you. Okay. If you choose not to retaliate, you're definitely neglecting the life and safety of your own citizen. If you don't retaliate, maybe we have a probability of whether or not we succeed, but you pass on the responsibility to a different person. At that moment, you have failed as a government.
Okay, you talk about how we fail as the government, right? But would you prefer a world where now, for example, someone literally could be anyone? For example, in our worst case, where this country is quote unquote very in bad hands or in such chaos, right? We want to say that in your case, you're worse because now you have both countries where they're both left being chaos, where other countries can simply just go inside this world, go inside this country and simply invade them and make it so that this land is literally them, right? You make it so everything is practically worse and more worse, because now you make it so these quote unquote human lives are literally nothing meant to them at all, and more like a tool for like a bird you can just steal a lollipop from, right? So we want to put one simple thing, is that you cannot just simply say that, okay, for example, if someone took your lollipop or whatever, you cannot just simply take away someone else's lollipop, right? We want to clearly clarify that it's completely unmoral for someone to literally start including more and more people who are not involved, right? For the case where we might talk about how, okay, there's leaders and leaders conflict, that we accept that it's justifiable for leaders to conflict and have these arguments or whatever, right? But we want to say that you should not it's not actually moral and correct for a government, for someone who's leading, for anyone to even have a proper mind to start involving more people who does not actually have any involvement in any of these things in the first place, right? Okay, I'll take one more POI.
We have already told you since DPM is that people are complicit in their government's action. Insofar as they didn't do anything to prevent the harm of nuclear war, they are also complicit in the consequences that come about them in the eventually.
Well, can you repeat that POI?
We told you that people are complicit in their government's action. So insofar as they didn't do anything before it even happened, they are also, in consequence, the recipient of the consequences their government must face in the name of justice.
Okay, but in the name of justice whatsoever, right? You say that we don't have anything prepared or defense, right? We want to say that even if there's this tension, I don't even know, bro. So even if we have this quote-unquote, okay, I was kind of confused with the POI, so I just skipped that for a little bit. So what do they keep tell us, right? They say that these nuclear nations will recommit these retaliation because these quote-unquote justice and whatever, right? We want to clearly say that practically by not attacking, we actually save more casualty, but the problem of these, for example, recommitting is automatically solved because, of course, no one in the right mind, the majority of these people actually believes that, okay, this is completely bad, right? Of course, they would have less support for the government to even recommit doing these bad things, because if you consider, right, for example, as someone who's out properly chained, right? If you, for example, in Germany, where Hitler was able to like kill a lot of people, right? At the end of the day, for example, in your time where you have this ideology and believe that, okay, killing is bad and these people actually have values in life, right? Of course, you're gonna support them less because you believe that these killings are actually very bad for these people, right? Vote for CO.
I thank the Op Whip for their fine remarks and everyone for a great debate. Everyone, once again, give it up for the finalists.
Okay, so teams English division, please clear your tables. because the Vietnamese division happening right now. Thank you.